Imagine studying for months, waking up early, getting up on weekends, taking practice exams after practice exams after practice exams. Then one day you sit down, take the exam, the day you've been waiting for finally happens. You see those words across the screen. Congratulations, you passed. You celebrate. You call your family. You even update your LinkedIn profile. You are proudly a CAPM recipient. And then something unexpected happens. The excitement begins to wear off. New questions begin to creep into your mind. Can I actually get a job? Do I have enough information to do the job well? What if everyone realizes I'm new? Nobody talks about what happens after you pass the CAPM exam. Today, I want to have that conversation. I remember believing that passing a certification would finally make me feel like a project manager. I thought I wake up the next day, probably just feeling a little bit different, a little confident, more qualified, more certain about actually being a project manager. I remember seeing that I had passed the CAPM, and for that moment, it felt like all the early mornings, the late nights, the practice questions, the self-doubt. Well, they finally paid off. I had accomplished something I had worked incredibly hard for. I thought, this is it. This is the moment everything changed. But after the excitement settled, fear, wow, fear has a funny thing. It quietly took its place. Not because I regretted earning the certification, but because I suddenly realized something. Now I had to prove I deserved it. Questions started running through my mind. Am I enough? What if employees expect me to know more than I actually do? What if I get an interview and they ask me something I don't know how to answer? Those weren't hypothetical fears. They actually happened. I remember sitting in an interview and the interviewer asked me a question that completely caught me off guard. The interviewer asked, how do you prioritize multiple projects? From being completely transparent with you, I stumbled. At that point in my career, I wasn't leading multiple projects. I was just leading one project at a time. I tried to answer the question, but deep down, I knew I wasn't answering from experience. I left that interview disappointed in myself. But actually looking back, that interview taught me something I have never forgotten. Passing the CAPM didn't mean I hadn't finished learning project management. It meant I had earned the opportunity to begin learning it in the real world. That interview didn't expose my weaknesses. It exposed my next area of growth. And from that day forward, I stopped looking at certifications as the finish line. I started seeing them as the foundation. Here's the lesson, family. We spend months preparing to pass the CAPM, but very few people prepare us for what comes after. I thought passing the CAPM exam would eliminate uncertainty. Instead, it introduced a different kind of uncertainty. Not can I pass, but can I perform? And that's the transition every new project professional has to make. Passing the CAPM earns you credibility. Growing as a project leader earns you confidence. Those are two different things. Today, I want to share 3 fears I believe almost every new CAPM professional experiences after passing the exam. And more importantly, how to move through them. Fear number 1, what if I still can't get a job? This speaks to my heart so much because this is probably the first fear many people experience. If they don't, they're not being transparent with you. I experienced this. You finally pass, you update your LinkedIn profile, you submit application, and then crickets. Okay, you don't like crickets? Then it's silence, or worse, you're receiving another rejection. Suddenly you begin questioning everything. Was the CAPM worth it? Did I just waste my weekend, my nights, my family time, my just hanging out time? Was it just all worth nothing? Did I make the wrong investment? But here's the lesson, family. The CAPM is a credible builder. It's not guaranteed. Think of it this way. The certification helps you open the door. You still have to walk through the door and keep the door open. Here's 2 actionable tips I'd love for you to experiment with. First, don't only apply for project management positions. Look for opportunities like business analyst, project coordinator, project analyst, PMO analyst, implementation coordinator, junior project manager, and operation coordinator. Let me park here parenthetically, family. The reason why I mentioned those roles is because of the fact that it gives you exposure, it gives you experience. And I know everybody wants to jump into the project manager role, especially when you got your CAPM. And I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying, yes, you can do it. But also, I want you to keep your eyes open to opportunities that are outside that is, but that are still aligned with the project manager role. Project managers work with business analysts, coordinators, analysts, all these different type of roles. This gives you a full opportunity to get a visual of the role project manager. Second, build experience while you're searching. Volunteer, lead initiatives at work, coordinate projects for nonprofit organizations, organize community events. Every project becomes another story you can actually tell during an interview. Here's my professional advice. Hiring managers are looking for more than certification. They're looking for people who communicate well, stay organized, take ownership, solve problems, build trust. Those professional behaviors often separate candidates more than technical knowledge alone. Well, once you finally get the opportunity, a completely different fear usually shows up. Fear number two, what if I don't know enough? The first meeting, the first kickoff, the first status report, the first stakeholder conversation. That's when that panic, that concern, well, people just begin thinking, I passed the exam, but can I actually do this? Do I really have the skill set to lead or be part of this project? Well, here's the lesson, family. Passing the CAPM proves you understand the fundamentals. Experience teaches you how to apply them. Those are two completely different things, and that's okay. No one expects a new project professional to know everything. Here's two actionable tips I'd love for you to experiment with. First, keep learning after the certification. Read documents, observe experienced project managers, listen to episodes like this. I know it was a shameless plug, but I had to plug it. Ask thoughtful questions, study how experienced leaders communicate, and passing the exam should never be the end of your learning. Second, master the fundamentals: communication, meeting facilitation, risk management, stakeholder engagement, and status reporting. See, the professionals who consistently execute the basics will become the leaders people trust. Here's my professional advice, family. Your goal isn't to impress people with everything you know. Your goal is to become dependable. Consistency builds confidence. And then comes perhaps the most personal fear of them all. Fear number three, what if they find out I'm new? This is a fear nobody likes to admit. You walk into meetings wondering, at this point, you begin what I like to call the what if stage. This is when you start asking yourself questions like, what if someone asks me something I don't know? What if I say the wrong thing? What if they realize I don't have years of experience? Here's the lesson, fam. Every experienced project manager was once the least experienced person in the room. The difference isn't that the experienced leaders know everything. The difference is they become comfortable saying it. I don't know yet, but I'll find the solution to it. See, that's leadership. And that's what you need as a project manager. Here's two actionable tips I'd love for you to experiment with. First, don't pretend to know something you don't. Credibility isn't built by having every answer. It's built through honesty and follow through. Second, replace perfection with preparation. Oh, I like that, family, because you prepare yourself for your meetings. You prepare yourself by reading your notes. You prepare yourself by understanding your project team and your stakeholders. Think through potential questions before actually walking into a room. Preparation, it creates confidence. Here's my professional advice, family. People don't expect you to know everything. They expect you to be dependable. Dependability builds trust. Trust builds influence, and influence builds leadership. And that's why passing the CAPM is much bigger than earning a certification. Here's my final reflection, family. The fears you experience after passing the CAPM aren't signs that you don't belong. They're signs that you're growing. Every new chapter comes with uncertainty. The certification may get into the room, but your character, your communication, your consistency, your willingness to ask questions, and your commitment to keep learning, those are the things that build a successful career. If you're feeling nervous after passing your CAPM, we all been there, and you're not alone. Most of us have been there. The difference is that some people allow fear to stop them. Others allow fear to become their teachers, make a decision to let it teach you, because one day you'll look back and realize those fears weren't holding you back. They were preparing you for the leader you were becoming. Here's my closing thoughts, man. Passing the CAPM again is not the finish line. It's your invitation into one of the greatest professions in the world that I love, that I hope you fall in love with, called project management. So don't measure your success by the letters after your name. Measure it by the leader you're becoming. And if this episode encouraged you, challenged you, or reminded you that you're not alone in the journey, I would really appreciate if you share this episode with someone preparing for the CAPM. These are the tough conversations we need to have more of, because there's value and understanding when you're preparing for a certification, especially the CAPM, that this is part of the journey of becoming a better project manager. Is the CAPM valuable? 110%. Is it worth it? 110%. So remember, sets and reps beat talent when talent doesn't do the reps. If you're new to the episode, I go by the name of ED. For all you smart and intelligent folks out there, that just simply means it. Until next time.